Hey guys, welcome back to another video on my YouTube channel, and in this video we're going to be covering all the competitive settings that you need to know and to make sure that you have on so you're not messing up your chances of qualifying for the FNCS or qualifying for any other tournament this particular season. Chapter 3 is a really good opportunity for you guys to renew your chances and really get another good shot at qualifying and making your career as a pro player and making sure that you're doing really good. And the first step to that, as always, is going to be your competitive settings and making sure that you have the most optimal competitive settings available. So just make sure that you watch this through, have your game open as you're watching this and try to follow along and change your settings accordingly. And I think you'll have the most optimal settings after that. So thank you guys for supporting my channel and watching this video. Let's get straight into it. So if you want to get into the settings, you just have to go here, which is a completely new menu. It's kind of weird. Some people like it, some people don't, but you click here, you click to the settings menu right here. And after this, these are the settings that I have personally, but I think some things are just 100% you have to just match. Some things are preference, right? But some things are just for sure you have to match and make sure that you have just for optimal performance of your PC and optimal performance of the game in general. Okay, so first thing, some people play Windows full screen. I like full screen. It's just safe to go with it. I don't know exactly how Windows full screen works, but I think if you want to just play it safe, just play full screen and it should be completely fine. I don't think there's any detriments to playing full screen. 1920 to 1080 is the best resolution in my personal opinion. Any other resolution is some sort of placebo and try to make you feel better about playing the game. Maybe it makes the character model a little bit wider. However, you lose a lot of FOV, right? A lot of vision when you change to a different stretch res. So if you want to just keep it safe, play on 1920. A lot of pros are playing on 1920. There are a select few pros who play on stretch resolution, but I do think that it's just a slight preference thing. I think if you just get used to 1920 resolution, you'll have a really good time of just seeing the most area around you on your screen. And I think that's going to be the most helpful in a competitive setting. So make sure you have it on 1920. I don't like stretch resolution. I do not recommend stretch resolution. Try to stay away from it. Frame rate limit is quite literally the hertz of your monitor. So if you're running on a 144 hertz monitor, please play 144 hertz, right? I don't think there is a 144 hertz, right? So you can go up to 160 if you want a little bit more smooth experience and make sure that you have some capability to go a little bit further, but 144 is fine. Somewhere around this range should be fine for you. And if you have a 240 hertz monitor, make sure you're playing on 240 and cap your frames, guys. If you just leave it unlimited, there are detriments to doing so. And I think it's just better to cap your frames and make sure you're using less resources on your PC. Next thing is brightness. This is completely relevant to how you feel on your monitor. You have to understand your monitor's brightness is very different. So I cannot give you a brightness. I think this is purely preference. Just make sure that the brightness is not a detriment to your vision in game. And I think any sort of brightness will be good then. Just make sure your visuals aren't affected by it, right? You make sure you can see as much as possible. Really good daylight brightness and really good nighttime brightness based on the map. You can play around with the settings here and just sort of test as you play the game and you'll get a really good setting. I play 75%, but again, the brightness of your monitor could be totally different. So please play around based on what your monitor is and try to find a good brightness for yourself. A really good safe number would be to just stick at the default, which is 100%. Colorblind mode, this is preference again. Really depends on what you prefer playing. I like to just play colorblind off. I think that is one of the best ways to just play. So try to leave it at that and I think you'll have a good time. So view distance. So this one's important, okay? This is what a lot of people get wrong. You do understand that view distance doesn't affect your ability to see other players, okay? So that's the first thing you should get right away. So if you have the view distance on near, right, on the lowest setting, this will not affect your ability to see other players. However, medium gives you a nice balance because what this does affect is your ability to see loot and your ability to see chests on the ground, right? So you don't want it to be far or epic because it just takes too much stress on your PC. And as we know, even with really, really good PCs that these pro players have, there is a detriment in endgame where it gets really stressed out and you want to get the most frames as possible. So try to keep this to medium if possible. Textures can be low for better FPSs, and I prefer playing on high meshes performance mode. This is what is really important, guys. So one video that I would like to give a good shout out to is this video on screen right here. And I think this video is really good test. So I will leave the link in the description. Please check it out. It's a really, really good test to prove that high meshes is actually the best mode possible for graphics, right? I think it's really, really good because a lot of people think that low meshes gives you better input delay. But according to this video, you can see in this test that it doesn't actually matter that much, right? So if that's the case in terms of FPS and input delay, if high meshes doesn't have that much of a difference to low meshes, you would rather the high meshes so you can see through your own full built walls in competitive. And I think that's something that's very important in a competitive setting, because if you can't see through your own walls and you have to edit, like make a door and make it weak to see through it, make it transparent, that's very scary because in the SMG meta, in the AR meta with spray meta, it's very, very scary to do that, right? You really want to make sure that you're able to see through your own walls. That's the most important thing. So high meshes enables you to do that. Leave VSync off. This gives you input delay. Show FPS is really nice to keep on because it really helps you see if your PC is performing as expected. And rendering mode, of course, you leave it on performance mode. It gives you the best FPS, best input delay. Some people prefer DX11, but I really think performance mode is something that everyone should be running. It gives you the best opportunity to not drop frames in the end game. So moving on, next setting, obviously play on your region. I really think that auto open doors should be on, so it's not on by default when you load up the game the first time. So make sure that auto open doors are on from the beginning. Sprint by default, this is a preference thing, but I think most people play it with it on. I actually still press my sprint button even though it's on. It's just like a habit. I can't play without it, but if you want to leave it off, you can. I don't think it will affect you that much, so this is not an important setting. Play it off preference. Anything else here? So pre-edits, right? Pre-edits is important. However, in a duo setting, I don't think it'll be that prevalent. So until you start seeing pro players use pre-edits, I would leave this off, right? So it says disable pre-edit option. So what I would recommend is not having pre-edits available. So meaning leave it on, right? Leave it disabled. This way, when you're building, you won't accidentally pre-edit. If you've ever been in a situation where you've accidentally pre-edited something, you'll find that it's not a very fun experience when you're getting server sprayed by a lot of people in your lobby. So just make sure that this is off. If you have some sort of strategy that you want to run with the pre-edit, then you can change it then, right? But in default, if you don't want to do anything, I don't think it'll happen in duos that often. So then just leave it disabled in that case. This is a big one, guys. So confirm or edit on release. In my personal opinion, this is a different opinion than most. However, I personally think the pros and cons of switching to the better edit on release setting, I don't think it actually is that big of a difference. So watch out for this. I think a lot of people will bait you into thinking like, oh, you should play like edit on release off, or you should play edit on release on. I personally think, I'm of the opinion that if you have a setting played for more than like 6 months, do not change it. It's not worth it to try to like relearn something for a slight benefit when you can instead use that time to learn something game sense related and learn something in terms of micro and your mechanics, right? So instead of practicing your muscle memory again on edit on release or on edit on release off, you can then instead use that time to learn the game better by VOD reviewing, by practicing in creative on your already used to keybinds, and also just in general, just not worrying about it that much, right? The difference is very minimal and it actually doesn't matter that much, right? So just pay attention to that and really understand that, because I feel like a lot of people get baited into switching, you know, a ton of keybinds every single time and switching edit on release a ton of times. It's not a very popular opinion, but that is my opinion. Whatever you have it, leave it at that, right? And if you're a noob, if you're new to the game, I would recommend playing edit on release, because it actually makes you faster, because you're not used to the APM of, you know, having to press your edit key twice with the other setting, right? So just leave edit on release on. That's what I would recommend to newer players. And if you're a very experienced player, just play with whatever you have, right? I don't think it's worth switching to the other one. My sensitivity is a very low sense, right? Because I have trouble aiming. I think that there's a very big misconception with low sense, right? So a lot of people understand that Fortnite's a very fast-paced game, and it's very important to play very fast-paced in Fortnite and not, you know, have to be very slow and sluggish. However, people think low sense means that you are slow and sluggish. This is not true. You have to understand, with the mouse, you have the benefit of using your arm and being able to crank a lot more, right? So some people actually play on lower sense than this, and they have fine mechanics, right? So just get used to it. Start using your arm more on mouse. I think on controller, you should look for a medium sense, maybe a Miro's sense or Days sense, and try to follow that. I'm not a controller expert myself, so it'd be the wrong question to ask me there. So in terms of targeting sensitivity and scope sensitivity, I just recommend keeping them the same, but trying to maintain them at a, you know, 50% or somewhere around that area. I used to play on 100%. I don't think it's that good. However, if you're really, really good with it, I think you can get around with it. This is mostly preference, guys. Sensitivity really comes down to your playstyle, comes down to how you move the mouse or controller, and it really comes down to your preference. But just pay attention, because sometimes people just play really, really high sensitivity, especially beginners. But I really recommend low to mid sensitivities for most people. You'll find that your aim, which is really important in fights, comes down to be much better with the low to mid sensitivity. So definitely recommend that there. In terms of controller settings, this really, again, I'm not an expert on, but if you want to find controller settings, I'll link a video down below of one video that I think is really good. Just look in the description and you'll find really good controller settings there. In terms of audio, this is actually very important. So a lot of people think that audio shouldn't be covered. This right here, guys, visualize sound effects. Really, really good setting. I think every single competitive player or anyone that's playing Fortnite should do this. So there's several things that you just do not get if you don't have this on, right? Number one, reboot vents can be heard literally across the map. Number two, you can see footsteps genuinely. Number three, you can tell when someone's healing. And number 4, you can hear llamas and birds. In other cases, you would not have heard, right? So it's really nice in that sense. And I think it's really, really good for you to keep this on. You get just so much information that you're not used to. And I think that information is going to be very helpful for you. Very good, guys. Last thing, I put sound quality high. I believe that's the best way to play it. So just copy the audio settings here. This should just be mainly default. Last thing is keybind. So if for PC players, there are 2 main things that you need to do. First thing is mouse wheel down, secondary bind. On the use bind, this is item scroll wheel pickup, right? This will help you in a 50-50 situation, in a off spawn situation, to really make sure that you're picking up that item first before the opponent. So make sure you have scroll wheel binded to the use bind secondary, right? This is going to help you sort of pick up items a lot faster. The other thing that you have to make sure is make sure that you have scroll wheel reset. This is going to be very helpful for you because scroll wheel reset is really helpful in box fights and Fortnite. And for any keyboard and mouse player, this is very essential. This has become a staple. So if you're new to the game, this is how you quickly set up scroll wheel reset. Your building edit would just be on any edit bind that you want, and your secondary bind would be which way you want to scroll wheel to reset your wall. Okay, so in my case, if I want to reset a wall or a stair or a floor, I just look at that piece and then scroll wheel up on my mouse, right? That helps me reset that build a lot faster. And then the other thing that you need to make sure you're doing, because it's not the only thing, the second thing that you need to make sure you're doing is the reset building edit has to be binded here. So the way that you do this is that you have primary on reset building edit and then secondary on building edit. You need to have both of these binded to the same direction on your scroll wheel, and then use the opposite direction for your use bind. So use bind's up here, I believe. Yep. Use binds here. So if I want to pick up an item, I scroll wheel down. And if I want to reset a wall or a floor, I just scroll wheel up. These are very important binds for you guys because I think box fighting will become a lot easier for you once you get really used to these binds. These are must, guys. If you're keyboard and mouse players, you must do this. So controller players really have aim assist and other, aspects where they excel in. Unfortunately, they don't have scroll wheel reset, and that's a pro and con to playing either input, right? You have to pick your battles and pick your strength that you want to choose, right? So if you really want really good aim, controller is good for you. And if you really want, more flexibility with building and be able to 180 a lot faster and be able to wall reset way faster, then keyboard and mouse is really nice for you. So I think it really comes down to preference there. Usually I would just say there's been, so many examples of pro players on both inputs. I say you should just continue playing on whatever you're playing on, genuinely, right? Do not feel tempted to switch. I feel like a lot of examples where people have switched, they've genuinely just gotten worse. I think there's examples of this in every single region, right? I don't think you should switch if you're on keyboard and mouse, genuinely, right? Just stay on your input, get really good at it, because what matters most in terms of placing in tournaments is going to be your skill level and genuinely nothing else, right? So really focus on that. Anything else? I don't believe so. This is it, guys. This is the competitive settings for 2021 going into 2022, going into chapter 3. Please make sure you copy all of these, and where I said preference, right, you can play around with those settings, but everything else, performance mode, bindings, really make sure those are set in stone, because those are going to help you succeed in competitive Fortnite. Thank you guys for watching this video. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Hope you guys learned something new in terms of settings, and I hope you guys succeed in the new competitive year of chapter 3. Peace out.